lot of deer here and turkey. The first night I made syrup on February 4th, the coyotes were out howling. We're at the sugar house tonight. We made syrup yesterday and there was a lot of steam and I wanted to let it go out of the cupolas. The cupolas are way up at the top. And it's raining tonight and it's snowing. I want to keep the rain out of the sugar house, so I'm going to go shut the cupolas. Come on in. There's a lot of light coming in. We'll get these shut up. Let it snow tonight. Keep the rain out. Tomorrow we'll make some syrup. This is a 5 by 14 liter evaporator, put here in 1973. We're going to be in trouble if it goes down to 0. If it goes down to 0, this will freeze up and I'll have to come down and thaw it out. Everything looks secure. We'll make syrup tomorrow. Looks good. We're at the sugar house, and we have about 750 gallons of sap here to boil, and the sugar house is used to make maple syrup. We have 1,100 taps on trees, and when we have a thawing day and we have a freezing night, the sap will run after the tree has begun to release the sap from the roots. We have a crew that goes around and gathers the sap from the buckets. We have a gathering tank on a wagon. A tractor pulls the wagon. We have 3 tanks that hold 25 barrels of sap. We bring the sap to the sugar house and we go right up this hill, and then there are 2 pipes that transfer the sap from the gathering wagon into the holding tanks. This is an old holding tank. I use this as a spare when I need a little extra space. Holds about 10 barrels of sap, and that holding tank holds 25 barrels of sap. That's about 750 gallons. From that holding tank, we filter it going into those tanks, by the way. From that holding tank, it comes down into this float device. From this device, it goes through a pipe into this evaporator. This is at the point at which we start to take out 48 gallons of water and end up with 2 gallons of syrup. And it comes across here. It goes into this flue pan, comes into this flue pan, then it comes into this finishing pan, and as it crosses the channels in the finishing pan, we're going to have syrup on that side, the finished product. We grade our syrup, as all sugar makers do. The better quality of syrup, the better the product. This is a grading system that was established in Vermont. It's pretty much universally used. These 3 syrups are grade A, or table syrups. This is light amber, medium amber, and dark amber. This is grade B. This is typically used as a 2% syrup in pancake syrups. It's also used by food companies and cereals, even in chewing tobacco. We used to call this chewing tobacco syrup. This was a syrup that we made on February 4th. And as you can see, it's much fancier than the light amber, or the fancy, so we call it Fancy Plus. We made Fancy even on February 19th. And then on February 23rd, we'd had about a week with no frost and no freeze at night, and so the quality of syrup was going down a little bit, and then we started to make medium syrup. This is February 23rd, that's Fancy, that's medium. Just the other day, on March 8th, we were making dark amber. It's slightly lighter than dark amber, but it qualifies as dark amber syrup. Fancier syrup is harder to make. It's also more delicate. It has a very, very delicate taste. Usually darker syrup has a stronger flavor, and most people prefer dark syrup to fancy syrup. You can only make candy out of fancy syrup. You can't make candy out of dark syrup. And the thing that makes good dark syrup is cold weather. My dad used to say there's 2 seasons in northwest Pennsylvania. One's mud and one is snow. And snow and cold weather are the 2 things that make good syrup. Also dry wood, taking care of your equipment, keeping your buckets clean, boiling the sap in as soon as you take it out of the tree. And how many days have we boiled? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 days. This will be the 13th day we've boiled syrup. And the majority of syrup is taken, up to about 30% of your season's take, is taken in one big run. And that run occurs when the roots thaw and the tree runs for several days consecutively. And usually you get 1/3 of your run. We took 100 gallons in a 3-day run the 2nd week of February this year. This has been early season. Season is 6 weeks long from start to finish. And the earliest we've tapped was this year, which was February 1st. And the latest I've ever boiled was on April 8th. That's pretty late. Looks nice, doesn't it? This is the niter I was telling you about. Dirt particles and certain minerals in the water will adhere to this. This is sugar sand, or niter. Used to be used to sharpen needles and make pin cushions. Colonists would make pin cushions out of different items, and this was one that they would use. We just take that off. I had a guy that owned a coffee shop come here once and tell me this looked like his giant latte machine because it was all white and frothy. But the sap comes in this float. It travels today to the other flue pan, and it comes down, crosses the partition. It travels then 18 feet to this expandable pipe, and then it comes into the finishing pan. The finishing pan is flat. Be careful. This pan is 5 feet by 5 feet. This is also part of the, this is the part of the evaporator that actually turns the sap from 98% water and takes the 2% sugar and concentrates it and crystallizes it. And it goes from the back pan, the flue pan, through the box. It then travels into this flat pan. It goes down, and there's a hole in this partition right here. And it crosses over to the next pan, and as it travels through the 6 channels through this maze, it then becomes syrup on the other side. Trick is to keep the fire so that the air can get around your logs so they'll burn. Starting to turn color. Let's go over to this side. I think we're going to have some syrup this time around. You bet. Here we go. See how it's bubbling here? It starts to boil like this when it starts to crystallize. And right now it's crystallizing in this second pan. It's coming around into this first pan. And I suspect we're going to have syrup. We're almost floating in this first pan. We use a hydrometer, just like you would if you were testing antifreeze in your car. On this hydrometer, there's a cold test line and a hot test line. And when we're taking off here in a few minutes, there's the hot test. There's the cold test. It's a little red line. When this is syrup, this hydrometer will float to the hot test line. Syrup is always syrup 7 degrees above the boiling temperature of water. We know the standard boiling, so you can hear it, it's not even bouncing yet. Water boils at 212 degrees generally. If that's true for today, if water boils at 212, then syrup will be syrup at 219. Barometric pressure, humidity, all things factored in. Water doesn't always boil at 212. So it could boil under or over, and syrup could be under or over 219. So if you always use a hydrometer, you're taking into consideration then adjustments for barometric pressure and other factors that would alter the boiling point of syrup and the boiling point of water. The old timers used to just take their scoop and pick it up, and when the syrup began to sheet across, just like that, it was syrup. One thing's changed in the sugar house. We have laptops and cell phones. I'm taking off. Who is this? Call me back. Bye. Sugar house. Not quite. You can see how the bubbles have changed. When they're heavy and puckery like dimples, there's more sugar content. These are more even bubbles like soap bubbles. I can tell by the way the syrup looks here, also by the color and how it runs when the syrup is finished in this pan, and so then I can stop the draw. We have syrup again here. Smells good, doesn't it? Kids tell me it smells like cotton candy when they come in the sugar house. This is the finished product that we've drawn off. This is pure maple syrup. Pure maple syrup. The reason I make pure maple syrup, and this isn't what you buy in the grocery store. What you buy in the grocery store is probably corn syrup, or perhaps it has 2% pure maple syrup, and the remainder would be corn syrup and other sugars, potato syrup or beet sugars. I make syrup because this is tradition. This is spring. This is Mother Nature. This is a way of life.